I wanted to welcome everybody tonight. Yeah, again, it's another episode of Unmuted. It's really taking your voice and getting it out there and making sure that you're exposed to people that you normally would never hear from, or that you don't even maybe know who they are, but they have something that you can learn. And that's why you're with us again tonight, today, tomorrow, whenever it is that you're listening, driving your car. Um, Whatever the moment is, it's always about learning and education. And tonight, of course, I got my great co-host, Jeff Ross, on with me. Everybody give Jeff a thunderous round of applause. Awesome. Sandy couldn't be with us tonight because she's off somewhere else. I don't know if she's camping tonight or she's hiking mountains or she's doing business in some country. She's always somewhere and she's always going, which is a great thing to be. And Jeff, you ready for a great night?
Always, let's strap in and have a brilliant conversation with our mate Aaron. This is going to be an awesome conversation.
Awesome. Fantastic. So with that, I wanted to bring Mr. Aaron Young has just a formidable business background. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that. But just one of his companies alone, and it's funny, I got this wrong once. See if I get it wrong again. Has about 48,000 clients. Am I right this time? Am I
Yeah,
close? Yeah, I think I said
that's about right.
4,800
Yeah,
clients one.
we're sneaking up on 50,000
There
active
you go.
customers right now.
But he's been in business a long time. He's been a mentor of mine and Jeff's, and he really is, again, teaching and education. The thing he's done for me, too, is he's really taken me to the frame of what it is to be a CEO, what it is to run your own business, and what that truly means compared to always in there in the trenches, transactional, and all that fun stuff. So, Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive in.
Aaron Young, I've been married 39 years. I have 4 kids and 10 grandkids, and I love horses and breed horses. And I started my first company at 19 with a payroll, like a real company. Not like I was selling door-to-door cookies at 12 years old. When people tell me they started their first business at 8 years old, I almost immediately discount them. This was a real company with real equipment and 5,000 customers and 3 full-time employees beside me at 19, and did that. That was the first recycling business in Portland, Oregon, then one of the first cellular phone dealers in the Northwest back in 1986. And then I had a wonderful experience of the cellular phone business changed all in one meeting. So guys, you have to understand that the rug can get pulled out if you're dependent on somebody else. In this case, we were dependent on GT MobileNet, the carrier. So in one meeting, my whole world changed. 5 stores, bunch of employees, 25 salespeople or something like that. Anyway, and all of a sudden I was without a business and trying to figure out what to do as an uneducated 28-year-old. Thankfully, I got invited to lunch with a guy who wanted me to see if I would come work for him. I said, well, tell me about the business. He said, we have about 350 offices around the world. The headquarters is here in Portland. The test kitchen company is here in Portland. And we'd like you to be the vice president of sales. And I said, so for the Portland office? He said, no, for the whole world. At 29, I became vice president of sales for a big multinational. And a year later, we went public on the big board of NASDAQ. And so at 30 years old, this kid who had a 1.9 GPA in high school and no college really to speak of was doing this amazing stuff. Did that for about 3.5 years, made some good money, and was able to leave and start buying companies. And that's basically, we've been buying and fixing stuff ever since I was 32, 33 years old.
I'm sure you've got a lot of stories to unpack there for sure. And, especially the whole, rug pull and pivot and adjust. And I want to get into that later on in the conversation. But you mentioned the key word for me and my ears pricked up. You mentioned horses. So I grew up in quarter horse stud, so what type of horses do
Yeah.
you breed?
Well, I spent 20 years with Tennessee walking horses. When I was all the time growing up, I rode quarter horses or Appaloosas or all these hard trotting horses. And then I discovered Tennessee walking horses where I could not bounce and I could still go 10, 12, 15 miles an hour. That was great. Then I found a little smaller breed just about 10 years ago called the McCurdy Plantation Horse. Small breed, less than 1,000 animals worldwide, but they are an approved breed here in the United States. And they're like a quarter horse that's smooth gaited. So you get the smooth ride with all the chunky, muscular, working, athletic ability, and they're fantastic. And I've
I
got
love that.
6 of them right now, and I think they're great.
Wow. So I grew up, camp drafting, which is an Australian sport. It's only ever done in Australia, but it's like a horse and cattle version of sheepdog trials. So
Okay,
you got to
sure.
look up handcrafting, but we also did cutting as well. So we did a lot of cutting with the NCHA and in that space. But yeah, that was my upbringing. Growing up on quarter horse and studs, and it was something that taught me about a lot of work ethic. Working around
Oh, yeah.
horses, and you definitely need that in business, right?
Well, I was teaching an event a few weeks ago, and people were asking me some questions, and I started teaching them about, we were talking about employees and about negotiating affiliations, and I said, now, so put a pin in everything I just told you, all this business language I just told you, and let me tell you about horses. Has anybody ever ridden a horse? Everybody ever led a horse around by a lead rope or tried to put a horse in a trailer? Anybody? I said, here's the deal. If I take a horse and I walk that horse up to the trailer and I step into the trailer and the horse doesn't want to go, it doesn't matter how hard I try to force that activity. I can yank as hard as I want. The horse will always win that tug of war. So what do? You get out, you walk around, you just turn the horse, you start turning it in circles, you go back and forth, and then you walk it back up and you walk it in. And normally the horse will not freeze again at the trailer. If you've got its feet moving, it'll tend to keep moving. When they lock up, then you're messed up. You're at a disadvantage. But if you can keep their feet moving, you can get them to do what you want. And it's the same thing in a negotiation, in working with
Mm.
employees, in working any kind of relationship. If it gets to be a tug of war, you may very well lose the tug of war. But if you can keep it moving, just keep looking at angles, keep turning it over in your head, having conversations, eventually you can tend to get the thing you wanted done, as long as it's a fair and ethical thing. And so that was my recent, you
That's
just
like,
pulled that out of my memory. I had a
yeah,
horse
yeah.
story teaching about 200 business people.
It's fascinating. I've definitely used a lot of because I used to break in and train a lot of horses, and I actually that was my upbringing. That was what my dream life was going to be. I was going to be a cowboy for the rest of my life until the horse jumped to my neck, and I had to learn how to pivot and go do something else. And look, I'm grateful for those trials and tribulations, and because I wouldn't be here today probably without that. But you're talking about there, the horse locking up and negotiating, and I know that, part of the conversations that we've had behind the scenes with your mentorship, and a few of the things that
Mhm.
Michael and I have been doing together. One of the things I've come to know about you, Aaron, is you're great at, conflict resolution. You're great at, helping to take the wind out of the sails and pivot and come at it at a different angle, that type of thing. I love to go a bit deeper with that. So how's that skill been formed? And for our listeners, because at the end of the day, in business, right, we're dealing with a lot of people. We're in the people business, and we're all walking, talking skin bags full of human emotions. So what are some of the things that we can learn to be better at, helping us to take the wind out of the sails, take the emotion out of the equation, and get business done?
So a lot of people will tell you entrepreneurship is a highly emotional experience.
Mm,
It's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of unknowns. Um, One of the things I teach people to do is to, um, if you look at the definition of the word Zen, it's not just sitting there meditating. It's not what to be in. One definition of the state of Zen is to look at everything unemotionally. Just look at it for what it is. You may not like what it is. You may not like that things aren't going the way you want. You may not like the tax that was just passed by your government. You may not like the war. You may not like the person that's buying your business. You may not like a lot of things. If you get emotional about it, and it's kind of like locking up or getting into that tug of war we talked about, versus going, okay, so under these circumstances that do exist, what options do I have? What do I think I can do to encourage or discourage or cajole or convince someone to move a little bit, get their feet moving? Well, I didn't mean for these to fit together, but they kind of do. Um, the the other thing um, that I've learned, and I learned it from my wife, who's in the psychology industry, is when we get too fixed on a certain thing that has to be this way, we miss out on a lot of other opportunities versus having that curiosity, that looking around, that wondering, what
Mm,
else is possible. I had to do that a number of times in my career, when all of a sudden things were not going at all the way I wanted them to go, or it seemed like the industry was I should say the industry, the economy, the conditions, COVID, the '08 crash, all these things were conspiring against my goals.
hmm.
And so I had to rethink. Not what I realized is that I didn't have to rethink my goals. I had to rethink my tactics.
The
And
approach.
so it's like you go, well, I was on this nice clear road and everything was working. Now the road's gone. Well,
Mm,
instead of standing there at the cliff and crying into the abyss about the roads destroyed, you go, what else is there? What other way is there to the destination? So that's that is a way. It's hard to not be emotional, but if you catch yourself being emotional, if you catch yourself being afraid, being angry, being scared, you may stop and go, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen to me? I could lose everything I have. Okay, if I lost everything I have, then what would I do? And then you go, well, I guess what I would do is this. And then you have a plan. And then you don't have to be afraid of the worst case scenario because now you got a plan B. And it removes a lot of the stress.
yeah. Mm,
So,
powerful.
because that stress comes up for all of us, right? Everybody goes through that stress, and how sharp does that plan B have to have? Because I know a lot of people are thinking, but if I lose all this, what would my plan B even look like? If you can give an example of that or something that's come up? I think that's a really powerful piece. And the other thing you've done for us, and we'll move into that too, is really how to be that CEO. But go ahead.
Well, the plan B is, well, first of all, to some extent, it's an exercise. You're considering what else. If I was taken naked with no money and dropped in the middle of a foreign country where I didn't speak the language, what would I do? Right? It's that sort of a thing. Except for you know your own life, you know your own skills, you know your friends, you know the associates that you've made over time, and you go, okay, if this all crashes and burns, I have these people I can call on. I have this thing I could go do. I could get it. I mean, I don't know if I could get a job. I suppose somebody would hire me. I haven't had a job since I was 32. So I don't, and at 62, I don't know how marketable I am as an employee, but I am still pretty marketable as a consultant. Even the crashes, depending on how you deal with the destruction that comes up, how you deal with it can actually move you up in the view of other people.
Mm,
And so all your wounds and all of the things that freaked you out a little bit, but the fact that you overcame it, notwithstanding the problem, that you survived the tsunami, actually makes people go, "Wow, he was doing all this," and then that. I'll tell you this. Um, I've met two distinctly two distinctive kinds of people who've made money. There's the ones who made money, like they just were that unicorn. They made a ton of money. They did a .com thing in yeah, maybe 1999, 2000 before the crash. Or they did something and they made a lot of money. And I've known a lot of guys, especially in tech, who made a lot of money, but I've seen people do it also in buying something, fixing it, and reselling it. The and then there's the person who does something really well and then has the crash and then comes back and in a pretty short time has built their wealth back up. The first person very often never has a second level of success like that first one because they don't really know what happened. They were just right place, right time, right circumstances, met the right people, and it all aligned and they had their big exit. The other person is one who knows why the machine works. And even if something falls apart, they know how to build the machine again. And I, those are the people that I'm fascinated by. These people tend to be arrogant and then depressed. These people seem to always be in motion, doing something interesting and cool. They always have money. They're always meeting the coolest people and going the best places. And it's because they understand the mechanism. They didn't just get the experience, like putting a quarter into a vending machine and getting the Snickers bar.
yeah,
They
yeah.
know how to make the Snickers bar.
So how important is it to, almost go through something like a trial by fire? Because I know as I'm hearing you talk, I know I've been through probably 2 or 3 crashes and I've been able to rebuild back up and, here we are today. And every time you rebuild back up, it is a bigger, better version of it all. But though what those crashes did for me was they taught me essentially the character building skill set of resilience and tenacity. How important are those characteristics to be an entrepreneur, to be successful in business, especially in today's world?
To have tenacity, to have integrity. If you have those things, you're always going to be valuable to people. If you have any intelligence at all, if you have any capacity to function at all, and you're tenacious and you have integrity, you'll always be invited into somebody's campfire, right? Somebody's always going to want you in their group, right? Um, th- I think the biggest thing is to not let any crash be the definition of who you are in your career, who you are as a person, who you are
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
a creator, as an inventor, as a builder. Because everybody, I was just watching a thing, right as we're recording this, the Pope is over in Spain this week, and he's going to do a thing at the Sagrada Familia. And for anybody that's been to the Sagrada Familia, you know what an amazing place that is, and it's being built for over like 150 years or something. Gaudi, who designed the whole idea and created this thing, it's taken well over a century to get it to where it is, and it's still not done. And there were a lot of problems and a lot of things they didn't understand how to do, but it just keeps moving, and Gaudi's vision keeps going. There's a tenacity in the people that have picked up the torch. There's an integrity in, we're doing this for art, for God, for something greater than ourselves. And the problems that come along are just inherent to growing anything, right? The whole thing about uh, Edison, and oh, you failed 10,000 times. No, I found 10,000 things that didn't work for the filament, right, of the light bulb. It's just your perspective. And
Mm.
if you see yourself as bigger than this thing that just happened, as your vision is bigger than this hole you just fell in, you go, oh yeah, I'll get out of the hole and I'll keep going.
What's really come to mind though is when you can, get into like the laws of navigation and steer the ship through the storm and all that. It's very clear that most of those people have a very clear purpose. Like they know where they're going, they know what the mission is, they know the direction, and then it's just a storm. So we just pivot and adjust. We'll just get around it. We'll figure it out, right?
Yeah, or we'll trim our
Yeah,
sails a different way and we'll ride through
right.
this. We'll use the
That's right.
power of the storm to drive us.
Mm.
That's right. The other thing too is you wrote a book called Unshackled.
I did. Right there.
And tell us a little bit about how that came about.
I used to get asked to come to big companies, CoverGirl, Max Factor, WebMD, Procter and Gamble, hospitals, Indian reservations, all these large organizations, and sit with the leadership team, C-suite team, board of directors, and help them figure out where they had blind spots or what was going on. I wasn't a consultant. I really was like a canary in the coal mine. I was usually only there 1 day or 2 days, right? And I'm just like noticing stuff. Um, I always felt weird about I liked the big checks, believe me, I loved it. One time the head of global HR for Procter, or for CoverGirl Max Factor, when she was handing me my $25,000 check for the day, she said, "We would have paid you $100,000 for today." I said, "Oh, thanks for telling me, but I wish I would have known. Can I trade this?" And she's like, "No."
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
um, she could have probably come to me and said, this was worth $5,000. You got lucky. Thankfully, we had a good day. But the point is, I thought they can't really get very much out of these. You can't do enough to have a holistic shift and in a day or 2 days. So I created this course called the Unshackled Owner. And it was a 12-week course. I was afraid that nobody would sign up for it. I promoted it out to all these business leaders, and 13 companies joined the first group. I didn't spend one nickel of the money that I collected from all these people because I was sure they were all going to want their money back. And I at the end of the course, I quizzed everybody, and I said, "What could I do to make it better?" And they said, "Could you make it easier? It was too hard." And I thought it was so easy, like so dumbbell easy that everybody's going to go, this was a waste of time and money. But instead, it was like, can you make this simpler? So I simplified it down, and we've had hundreds, maybe 600 companies, some really big companies, a lot of public companies, lots of small companies too. It's not that it's not for the 5-person company, it is, but we're doing it at Amazon right now. And so, when they've got 1.6 million employees, if I can nudge their management teams a little bit, you can have a
Mhm.
very broad impact. But I don't really care if it's it could be a 1-person company. It's not as useful because you're by definition shackled as a 1-person company, but you can learn things. I built the course. The course was great. One of the guys that was from Romania, he's a guy that had a tech business, heard me speak in London. He said, I want to learn this. So he took the class a bunch of times and went from $1.5 million in top line to over 33 million in top line in about 3 years. And he said, I had everything in my head. I just didn't have a formula. So with the formula, he just blew up. So one day he said, Aaron, we need a book, because he said an engineer, for instance, in Romania or Hungary makes about $500 a month. He said they could never afford your course. That's $7,500, but they could afford a $20 book. Could we do a book? So I said, you be my co-author, and we'll say, here's what I taught you and how you implemented. And tech, 29-year-old in tech in Eastern Europe and a 58-year-old gray-haired guy in American business services, same rules apply. And the book's done well. We were recently told by our publisher in New York that they're going to translate the book into 10 more languages. So
So
I'm
cool.
very thrilled about the book. Thank you very much. And
Well done.
and the book is great. And the reason for somebody to choose anybody can get the $20 book, and they're going to dramatically improve their business. The big difference is, and the reason people have said, well, Aaron, you are shackled because you teach the course. Anybody could teach the course. And I said, yeah, I could get a ton of people to teach the material, but who's going to do the Q&A at the end? Who's going to answer the questions?
Mhm.
I don't know a lot of people who've done 3 public companies, several dozen multi-million-dollar companies, had exits. I don't know a lot of people that are like me. And I'm not saying that there aren't a whole bunch, but it's my material, it's my methodology. It makes sense that I would answer the questions. And by the way, it's the most fun thing that I do, because we're actually moving people
Yeah,
ahead. And I
yeah,
love that.
yeah. Yep. Aaron, it's been great to have you on tonight. We're, of course, going to come down to the end, but we'd love to have you on again, number one, because there's so much more, I think, to unpack around that. And also for everybody listening, in the show notes will be a link to the book. You'll have the information you need. Get the book, trust me, because Aaron's one of my mentors. The book has been one of my mentors. I've also seen Aaron in front of very large masterminds and groups and really redirect people and really help them down that road like I haven't seen many do. And I've been around this industry a long time. But Aaron, any last things you'd like to tell the group or leave them with one thing they could do today to help them move forward?
Well, I think because of what we've talked about today, there's been this little lyric from a song bouncing around my brain while we were talking. And so maybe my OCD makes me need to make that, and hope I get it right. It's from a Jimmy Buffett song. And he says, yesterday's over my shoulder, so I can't look back for too long. There's too much to see waiting in front of me. So if you're having a difficult time, if you've fallen in the pit, if you're wondering what's next, if you're wondering if you can do it, don't spend too much time looking back. Appreciate the lessons you've learned. There's a whole bunch in front of you, way more than you can even comprehend. You don't realize how many opportunities exist if you're too laser focused on the one thing you were doing. So quit looking over your shoulder, start looking ahead, and you'll continue to make progress.
Of it. Thank you so much, Aaron. Jeff, great day.
I think
Jeff,
I'm
you're
sorry.
doing
he's a little, yeah,
Oh, we're here.
great day,
We're
Jeff.
here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
he's a
That
little
was,
delayed. He's playing, he's traveling the world. Yes, Jeff.
that was a brilliant piece of wisdom, and I've just loved this conversation. And every time we do these type of interviews, you learn another nugget. You learn something else about somebody, and it's been brilliant, Aaron. So thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. It's been great. Thank you. Thank you, audience, for listening. If you know and like us, hit the button, subscribe, make comments, whatever it is, share it with everybody on this planet, because there's always education. There's always more to learn. And if nothing else, you enjoyed the banter. I know Sandy's not here today, but that's okay. It's Jeff and I. We're looking our best. And look at Aaron. Look how sharp he looks. So, all right. I wanted to thank everybody for being on tonight. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for whenever it is. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening from Unmuted, and from those of us, my co-hosts, Jeff and Sandy and Aaron Young, for being on tonight. You have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.